Hey, Boy Manning here. Celtics finished their regular season with 61 wins. Back-to-back 60-win seasons for the Celtics here, beating the Hornets in back-to-back games with mostly bench crews and a pretty eventful regular season for what we expected compared to the running it back and expecting to be smooth sailing. There was a rough stretch in January. They bounced back and closed the season incredibly strong. Finished as a 2 seed. That was a little bit of a surprise, I think, compared to what people would have predicted, especially behind Cleveland. And now you have these big forces like the Cavs, like the Thunder, who are going to try to challenge the Celtics to repeat here. But let's look back at the regular season first. No Dalzell alongside. 2 stories each. Our 2 biggest stories of this regular season. What would you got for your biggest story this year?
Not necessarily my biggest, but if we're going to do a couple, I think Peyton Pritchard's ascension to a 6th man of the year, I don't want to say...
You think he's going to win?
I think he's a lock. I mean, I haven't looked at what the media mock ballots are, but I would be stunned if he didn't get it. And he came short of campaigning for it post-game today, but ultimately so many games early on that he won for this team, consistently shooting. I mean, he's been on a season-long efficient shooting stretch. Not just the shooting, the playmaking, the defense. Every part of his game improved this year, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people weren't sure about a couple seasons ago, and he still has a lot to prove in the playoffs because I think a lot of people still doubt what he can do against the best competition, and I don't, so we'll see. But certainly if you're thinking about how did they get to 61 wins despite a lot of guys going through pretty substantial slumps, Pritchard having a career year was a big part of that.
Honorable mentions the Jalen thing. We're not going to do it, but his challenge with the injuries and that going into the playoffs should definitely be on this list as well. And I'll start with Jason Tatum, who got to 6 assists per game, the round 6 by the end of the season, up from 4.7 a year ago. The shooting tailed off a little bit down the stretch. He didn't have one of his stronger efficiency seasons like he did last year, but there's a chance he can finish 3rd in MVP because of how well he moved the ball. I think this is the first time people realize how good of a passer he is. And it made a massive impact on the team because they didn't have Brown at times. There were ups and downs by guys shooting the ball. And I felt like at times this year, just solely focused on passing. And there were games where he had 9 assists, 10 assists, 11. I think he hit his career high or tied it this year as well at one point there. And now I think it's not bold to say he's legitimately become one of the best passers in this league, regardless of what the bulk assist numbers are here. So that one to me was a massive development and finally rounded out, I think, what was the weakest point of his game at one point into maybe the best part of his game.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it was one of the weaker points of his game because it has just become so consistent, and beyond just the skill level of being able to find the right player at the right time, it's the willingness too. Like you can tell he's matured, you can tell he's not one of those stars that is trying to force the issue, that is trying to just prioritize getting his. And last year definitely affirmed it because he did it the right way in big moments down the stretch. He found guys rather than forcing a tough shot, and it translated to a championship ultimately. And you could see how that carried over directly into this year too.
But I'll go Luke, of course, because someone has to. His ascension, really from part-time, matchup-based player to a guy who I think going into the playoffs is going to have to be a significant part of their rotation, was stunning. The way it happened with the physicality. I looked today, he had 120, I believe, 117 or so more rebounds this year than last year. And the blocks went way up as well. He had 4 in this finale here. Double big lineups. He fits into pretty much every combination every night. Even saw them go to Kornet to try to have that in their arsenal. He was awesome this year, and the way I put it is that he was awesome every night they put him in after a certain point, and left no doubt about who the 3rd center was on this team and whether he's going to play or not in any given game. We'll still see what happens in the playoffs here. Some matchups I think could still be a challenge for him, but he's in a really good position going into the postseason, and even I think has some people worried about whether they can keep him or not.
And I think the biggest part of the Luke success story this year has been his connection with Tatum on the floor, because I think there's been a challenge in the past with this team of like, you have a lot of talent, but
that's their best
you didn't have a great
combination.
you didn't have a great 2-man action with Tatum. And last year Derek White and Jason Tatum emerged as that, and it was huge for the Celtics. It was one of their best actions down the stretch. And this year, like, Luke's awesome as is, and I'd be curious to look like if he just signed with some random team this summer, like what he looks like next year. I think he'd be good. But the way those two guys have figured out how to play off one another, Tatum sung his praises towards the end of the season here about just how selfless he is. Definitely was a key part of their success, and their 2-man net rating is phenomenal. So I'm curious to see how that translates into the postseason.
Phenomenal. Who you got next?
This isn't one of the biggest storylines, but I think if I had to close out just takeaways from this year. Last year in June, people were thinking Al Horford was maybe going to retire because they finally won a championship. Nobody's thinking he's going to retire. He's not retiring this summer regardless of what happens in this playoff run, but just another year where you were able to see that he steps up in big moments against some of the top competition in the league, against some of the best players in the NBA. Al had big games this season. His numbers tailed off a little bit, but as far as how comfortable do I feel, how confident do I feel heading into the playoffs that Al is going to be able to contribute big time, I have the same faith that I had last year, and they're going to need him depending on who they match up against. So the fact that he didn't massively drop off, he remains dependable, durable, didn't really deal with anything visible that we saw, just kind of shows his professionalism, but also just at age 38, he's still one of those veteran big guys that you really want on your roster.
That Lakers game was a real moment for him too. I think ESPN said that was one of the most targets a player has received on defense, period, across the tracking data years, and he held up and held them to like 0.36 points per possession during that game, and just took on every challenge. Celtics beat the Lakers when they were rolling into the Garden at that point. That was definitely one of the more memorable games of the year, and his performance there, a couple 20-pointers, a couple big shooting nights, and he'll probably be essential into the playoffs again here. Given Jalen's status, we'll see where that goes by the end of this week. They'll have a couple practices. We'll see what his participation level is there. Kristaps, a nice story this year too, the comeback he had, and then some real nice bench contributions lower on the roster as well here that got them to the 60-win mark again as rest became a priority. That's it for us. Great season here. Noah did phenomenal.
You too, Bobby.
Thank you. And well, I think Amit did great as well here. CLNS Media,
Amit did the best.
Celtics All Access. Check out all of our coverage throughout the week, practices, previews. Hawks and Magic play on Tuesday. The winner of that is going to be their first round opponent, so we'll have reaction to that game as well. And who it's going to be, let us know your favorite story of the season down below. And it's on to the playoffs. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. We will talk to you later this week, and shout out to our sponsors, Prize Picks and Game Time. Download both of those today.
CLNS Celtics coverage is powered by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.